There's a moment that happens to almost every famous person on Earth. It's not a scandal, it's not a meltdown, it's smaller than that, and way creepier. At some point, they walk into a room and everyone looks at them. And the next day, it happens again. And the day after that? And after enough days of this, something in their...
And once that reflex is gone, something even stranger starts happening to the way they see themselves, the people around them, and eventually, reality itself. It's not a metaphor. It's a documented psychological pattern with a clinical name. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly how a completely stable, normal brain gets rewired by fame alone. No childhood trauma required, no personality disorder waiting in the wings, just attention. In large enough doses for long enough time. Let's begin. Here's what most people assume. Fame doesn't change you, it reveals you.
The arrogance, the entitlement, it was always there. Fame just handed it a microphone. That's the comfortable version of the story. It lets us believe that if we got famous, we'd be different. We'd stay grounded. Here's the problem. It's wrong. Psychiatrist Robert Millman spent his career treating some of the most famous people alive, and what he found broke the fame reveals truth theory completely. And he discovered that narcissism, full-blown, clinically diagnosed narcissism, can develop in previously stable adults, triggered entirely by their situation, and not by who they were beforehand.
He called it acquired situational narcissism, and clinically, it's indistinguishable from classic narcissistic personality disorder. Same grandiosity, same lack of empathy, same explosive reactions to imagined disrespect. The only difference is when it shows up and why. Fame doesn't just reveal character. In some people, it manufactures a new one. So how does this actually happen? How does a mentally healthy person turn into someone unrecognizable just from being watched? It starts with the room around them. Every famous person has an entourage whose job is to manage perception, not offer feedback. Researchers call this a narcissistic supply ecosystem. It's an environment engineered, without anyone intending it, to constantly validate the person's importance while steadily removing every mechanism that would normally hold them accountable. No one tells them no. No one gives them the blunt, uncomfortable truth a friend would give you. Every room is arranged around them. Every conversation subtly orbits their needs. Psychologists call this trait activation, the idea that certain personality traits stay dormant until the right environment switches them on. Fame is the ultimate switch.
But here is the twist that makes this darker than it first sounds. It might not even need to create anything new. One study comparing celebrities to the general population found something unexpected. Narcissism scores were higher among famous people, but they weren't correlated with how long someone had actually been famous. Which means fame might not be manufacturing narcissists from scratch as much as it's attracting people who already lean that way, then supercharging what was already sitting under the surface. Either way, the ultimate outcome is the same, a feedback loop with no breaks.
And for some people, that feedback loop doesn't stop at difficult to work with. It goes somewhere much stranger. In 2002, a psychiatrist at Bellevue Hospital in New York started noticing something odd. A handful of patients kept describing the exact same delusion, almost word for word. They believed their entire life was a hidden reality show. Their friends were actors. Their home was a set. Every stranger on the street was secretly in on it. Psychiatrist Joel Gold ended up documenting dozens of these cases and gave the condition a name: Truman Show delusion. This delusion was born from...
And when he and his brother studied the psychology behind it, they found it was built from two distinct ingredients fused together. Grandiosity, the belief that you're important enough to be secretly famous, and paranoia, the fear that you're constantly being watched. Grandiosity and paranoia, the exact same two ingredients that show up in smaller doses in ordinary celebrity narcissism. One case still stands out. A patient flew across the country to New York City right after 9/11, not out of panic, but to personally confirm that the attacks weren't a scripted plot twist in his imagined show. That's how deep the belief can burrow, deep enough to override an actual national tragedy. Most people will never develop a clinical delusion like that, but the underlying ingredients, the sense of being watched, the sense of secret importance, those same two ingredients exist in smaller concentrations in almost every famous person's daily experience. Which raises an uncomfortable question. How young does this start? Turns out, younger than you'd think. For child actors, this process is far more intense. They are now pushed to behave far older than their actual developmental stage allows. Scenes get written for children that assume an emotional maturity their brains haven't built yet. The child's nervous system is still being constructed, and fame is asking it to perform like it's already finished. That mismatch doesn't just disappear when the cameras turn off. Then there's a completely different mechanism, one that affects actors specifically, something psychologists call character bleed. Even without full method acting immersion, actors report a kind of duality where a character's traits linger after the role ends. Anger, obsession, despair that is not theirs, carried home. Some actors need active psychological strategies just to separate themselves from a character they finished playing weeks earlier. Fame doesn't just cost attention. For actors, it can cost pieces of a stable, singular sense of self. And it's not just happening to adults already deep in the industry. A UCLA-linked study surveyed pre-adolescents, kids between 10 and 12 years old, about their life goals. Fame came out on the very top. Not a career, not personal wealth, not family. Fame, by itself, was selected as the single most important future goal more often than anything else researchers tested. Kids are absorbing the blueprint for this psychological rewiring before they've even started building a stable identity to protect. Go back to that moment from the start. Someone walking into a room, getting looked at, and slowly losing the reflex to look back. Here's the part that should actually unsettle you. Millman's entire framework breaks the rule we usually rely on to explain narcissism. We like to believe it always traces back to something. A difficult childhood, an absent parent, some early wound that explains the behavior later. Millman's research suggests something far colder.